All right, and without further ado, we can introduce our panelists. Super happy to have all of these wonderful ladies joining us for our marketing and finance panel. And if you guys want to just kind of go down the line and introduce yourselves, give us a little bit about your background and maybe your education and work history.
Great. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to meet you virtually. Usually not gray haired. I look a lot older than I actually am, but with the pandemic, I've been really conservative. My name is Rohini Gupta. Everybody calls me Ro. I went to the University of Rochester and then moved out to Boston right after college graduation because my best friend and roommate in college grew up here in Massachusetts. I've been lucky enough to work with some premier providers. I started out at Fidelity, then went to Putnam, and then was at SSGA, and then hopped over to Natixis, where I've been for over 10 years. And I'm dedicated predominantly to work on APAC, and that includes Australia, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore. And so that's it on me.
All right, I think I'm next up in the lineup. So hi guys, I'm Karen Yazigi. I went to University of New Hampshire and have switched industries quite a bit in my career. So I was in Connecticut, as I was telling Rachel, and I sold radio advertising for Clear Channel Communications. And then I moved to New York City and launched the first spa in Barney's department store. So that was a total departure. And then I came back to Boston and started a career in financial services and have had a variety of jobs in different departments through John Hancock, and it was annuities and now life insurance. So my current job, I market John Hancock Vitality, which is a wellness division of it's a wellness program that you get when you purchase life insurance. So I'm primarily focused every day on food, fitness, road races. So it's kind of an extension of financial services, but it is in John Hancock Insurance.
Hi everyone, my name's Andy Firestone. I'm originally from Longmeadow, Massachusetts, and I went to Boston University, so not too far from you guys when you're on campus. After I graduated, I started at Havas Media, which is a media agency in New York City, and I worked on the Oppenheimer Fund's account. So that's how I got my introduction to financial services marketing. Oppenheimer Funds is an asset manager. It was acquired by Invesco in 2019. And so then after that happened, I was looking for jobs on the client side. So I was interviewing a lot of different financial services companies. And I started at Morgan Stanley in July of last year. And so now at Morgan Stanley, I work on the media strategy team, responsible for really all of the firm-wide media strategy, as well as helping with line of business campaigns as well.
Great. And hi, my name is Blake Hene. I'm from just outside of Chicago, Illinois originally. Went to school at Georgetown in Washington, D.C., and then came to New York after graduation and did not really know what I wanted to do. I had no formal marketing education or anything. And I ended up starting my career at SIFMA, the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association. And that was, I was there from starting in 2007. And so it was around the time just kind of the rise of a lot of new marketing abilities for financial services, namely social media. So that's sort of how I started learning about it. Switched industries to kind of get some experience on the retail side. So I was at Scholastic, the children's publisher, for a while. Then when it came time to change again, hopped back over, and I was at JP Morgan Private Bank for 5 years, where I held a variety of roles in the marketing team. So I did communications, I did US and Latin America regional marketing, I did operations. And now I am at Morgan Stanley, and I am a campaign manager in the Morgan Stanley at Work marketing team, which is a whole new business in financial services for me. So I've only been there a few months and learning a lot about a whole new area of finance that I actually didn't know much about before.
Awesome. So it sounds like we kind of have a lot of variety on this panel. I mean, we definitely have a range of employers, but a range of different experiences as well, which is pretty cool. So can you guys tell me a little bit about the role that you're currently in, and maybe what does your job look like on a day-to-day basis?
Do you want me to start, Rachel?
Yeah, I think it might be the easiest if we just kind of go down the line. So we're not.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Thank you.
So it's a very dynamic, Natixis is a very dynamic organization because we're truly global. A lot of players in the space will say they're global and they have an office in Tokyo and in London, but we actually are in 24 regions, boots on the ground, working. And so that brings a lot of complexity to the organization because it's small. The Boston office only has 450 employees, but worldwide there are over 5,000. And so with my dedication to APAC strategy, the night and given the time difference, it's just really interesting work that involves translation, cultural nuances, etc. So a lot of these things that would work from a media strategy standpoint that would work in the UK and the United States or Australia definitely do work in Singapore and Hong Kong and Taiwan. But it's just a matter of adapting, making sure that we're culturally sensitive and speaking to our clients there with sort of what their respective plights are and what their goals and objectives are, because those areas can vary. So yeah, it's really very challenging.
Let's see. I think you cut out for like the last second there. Sorry, what was the last thing? I think you said it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That it was just really challenging, but very interesting work. It's really like, yeah, I mean, I love it. I love the international.
Cool. Awesome.
Is my internet connection
it
okay?
cut out for a second there, but I think we caught the last bit of what you were saying. So
okay.
Yeah. And sorry, that might be on my end, but great. And now maybe we can switch to Karen.
Yeah, so I mentioned I work in sort of the wellness space within life insurance. And so my day-to-day is focused on developing strategies that are gonna sort of help our target audiences, which are firms, producers, prospective customers, and members, either get more engaged with the wellness solution and exercise more, or sort of eat healthier foods and things like that, or to increase sales of life insurance so that they buy it because they want to be a part of this life insurance solution. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And just as a small example, today I was working through, we offer wearable devices if you buy a life insurance policy, and Apple and Amazon were sort of both stating from a partner preference what they wanted out of the way that they're displayed in our marketing communications. And so part of my job is sort of saying, well, this is as a brand what I think we should do, and here's how we can incorporate our partners into sort of the larger life insurance conversation and what we're offering our customers. So that's just a small example of something I did today, but in general, it's mostly campaign strategy.
And as I said before, so I'm a marketing manager on Morgan Stanley's firm-wide media strategy team. So we're responsible for the firm's overall media strategy. And we also help several lines of business promote their own specific initiatives. So my team actually is working with Blake's team on a campaign. So it's funny to find out we're both on the panel. So that's like an example of a line of business campaign that we would support. And then a typical day, I work very closely with our media agency of record, just kind of making sure that all of the campaigns ladder back to our overall goals and strategies, and making sure that everything is executed correctly and accurately and on time. And then also being a liaison with the lines of business at the firm as well.
Yeah, and so jumping off then, being within then one of the lines of business, as Andrea mentions, so my role is to essentially be working on a day-to-day basis with our business partners and understanding what their specific needs and objectives are, and then helping strategize particular tactics and campaigns, whether that's email outreach, whether it's social media, and then helping to work with all the relevant partners to build the creative for that. Get through all the review process, which includes your business partners, it includes legal, compliance, and then the distribution side. So whether it's the team that's publishing it, printing it, whatever it may be, and helping to kind of make sure that all of the pieces are working together and you're on track. And yeah, it's just, marketing is a lot of coordination, I found in the roles that I've been in. And so just keeping in touch with everybody and making sure the wheels are always turning is a big part of the job on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. All right. A lot of interesting things in there. Some things are similar, some things are different between each of your day-to-day, so that's pretty cool. And next up, we have a question about your company culture. Can you tell me what the company culture is like at your personal company, and then maybe what you think the culture of the financial services industry is as a whole? And we can go back to Ro.
Okay, so can everybody hear me okay? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So this is probably the most collaborative culture. It's a core tenet of my organization. It's incredibly collaborative. And so what that means is that it's matrix organization, and it's very consensus driven. And so they really value strong leadership, diplomacy, and collaboration. And so that leads to a culture with each other. It's not that ideas can't be challenged and you can't spar with people, but it's more like it's a place of, and I think Rachel would agree, it's very respectful. It's just a place where people feel it's just a very peaceful place. It's different than other financial firms I've worked at. And I would say that, and the other thing is there's been a huge focus on diversity and inclusion. So what I'm really excited about is that we're global, so we have diversity in that respect, but it's really, we're going to be mirroring more of what the community looks like. And so there's an effort because if you have diversity on a team, whether it's gender diversity or ethnic diversity, the organization performs a lot better, as much as 36% better. And so that's another part of the culture that we're going to see a lot of growth, I'd say, in the next 5 years. And so, yeah, it's a very strong, very friendly, very collaborative culture.
So I'll just piggyback off of what Ro was saying. So when I first, one of my earlier jobs in John Hancock, I was in sales, and I'm wearing a blazer now, which I haven't worn in like 2 years, 3 years, but yeah, so when I was in sales, it was expected that you would, even though you were sitting at your desk just taking phone calls from people out in the field, you would wear a blazer with, if for women, you had to wear pantyhose, closed-toed shoes, pearls or diamonds. So it's been really fascinating for me to see how my company has evolved to where it is today, where you wear jeans, and now in the remote environment, you wear yoga pants, let's face it. So, I think that has been kind of interesting. So it still remains to be very professional and sort of an exciting, place to be as far as like growth and all those things. But the traditional viewpoint of financial services has definitely, in my company's perspective at least, sort of dissipated as like people have gotten to be much more casual and more diverse. Is definitely a theme happening in my company as well, which is awesome. So I would say just more laid back, but still the work doesn't suffer. So that's been kind of cool to watch.
Yeah, so for me, one of the things I think I value most about the culture at Morgan Stanley is, the people that I've worked with. I think everyone that I've worked with has been like super nice and kind of welcoming from when I started. And I think everyone's really passionate about what they do as well. So it's been great to work in that kind of collaborative environment. So I really, getting to know all of the different people and all the different teams, whether they're in marketing or not, that's been a great experience. And I would also say the leadership, especially during this time, I think the senior leadership has been very communicative, which has been, really helpful and also really compassionate. So I think those are things that have stuck out to me since I started.
Yeah, for me, I mean, very similarly. So I started this job remotely, which is, I'm sure years from now, people will be studying like what it was like to, for anybody starting jobs and doing this, because it has been a little bit of it's not even a culture shock. It's a very unique experience when I've not met any of my coworkers yet in person. So I have really appreciated, exactly as Andy just said, like the Morgan Stanley culture has been incredibly welcoming. My team, in fact, actually does. Once they went remote earlier in the year, well before I joined, twice a week, just a half an hour, just an opportunity for everybody to come together on the team. We sometimes play like games or do little, like take a picture of your workspace and guess whose is whose. And it's really fun things to help make sure people feel like they're still getting those casual opportunities that a lot of people right now in the remote environment are really missing from the workplace. And so I'm, again, being new, I don't have a whole long length of experience there, but I've really been appreciating that. I would say on an industry level, though, to what Ro said before about the diversity and inclusion, I have worked now at two incredibly large companies. JP Morgan in particular is one of the country's largest employers. I think the financial services takes its role very seriously in recognizing how many people it employs and that it has a responsibility to actually drive a lot of change and be on the forefront of being better, for employees. When I left Scholastic and came to JP Morgan, I remember so many people said, "You're leaving the world of Harry Potter and Clifford to go to Wall Street. Like, are you crazy?" And I thought, no, I know this might be nuts. People hate Wall Street. And I have been consistently impressed now at both of these very large organizations that I've been in that they really make an effort. Today being Veterans Day, got notes and things and to be sure to recognize employees and our countrymen and women who have served. So I really do appreciate that about this industry, that it sees itself as trying to be a role model, I think, in valuing all of its employees.
Yeah, a lot of really cool things about each company. I worked on some of those diversity and inclusion campaigns with Ro at my last co-op, and I can definitely say that it's great to see these larger companies taking initiative and really pushing for these efforts. So yeah, great that it was great to be able to work on that at Natixis, and I agree, Blake, that financial services is a big driver in kind of making these overall changes. So as a follow-up to that question, we talked about kind of the things that you like about your company and the financial services industry. What are some unexpected challenges that you've faced in your job at your company overall? And it could also be from a past financial services job as well, if your current job is perfect. All right.
So basically, I have been really lucky at Natixis. This is why I've been here for so long. I actually love it. I love the people. It hasn't been very challenging, and the way they've treated us during the pandemic, it's the kindest group of people, and the way they've treated their employees. But I will say, when I moved to Boston in the 90s, I was very disheartened with the lack of diversity. That was really hard on me. And so I felt a lot of pressure to sort of blend in. And, I worked at Fidelity, was my first job. And I remember they asked me to be in a recruiting video, and that was going to be shown at different, recruiting events, different campuses around the country. And they didn't have a Black person on staff in Boston. They had to fly somebody in from New York. And I know that sounds completely absurd sitting here in 2020. But that was very hard for me, being very young and it being my first job. I just felt very much like a fish out of water. And that, makes me deeply appreciate, as I grew in my career, I wanted to make sure that I was part of a group of people that really believed in recruiting in a way that was, that was more representative of what the world looks like. And so that's what I'll say.
I love that story. That's awesome to hear. So thank you for sharing that. I think, some unexpected challenges, right? So if I were to sort of give career advice, I would say that some changes happen because you want them to and you try and they happen. And some things happen to you because change just happens naturally. So throughout my career, I've been part of a lot of reorgs, or now your job is going to be X, or you're going to have a new manager. Or when I was in New York City, before financial services, I was working for a short time at a French hair care company, and the owner flew in from Paris to New York where I was working and just said, surprise, we're going to close our US operation. So these things happen all the time. And what I would say as far as advice, change is constant, especially in the world we're living in today with so many different things that are creating volatility. But you always have to sort of be flexible and chart your own path. And if you aren't happy where you are today, just say, okay, I'm going to look left and try whatever's left. And, it may not be exactly where I want to go, but it's one step better than where I am today. So I would just say remaining positive and open to change, because it's going to happen throughout your career. And sometimes you're going to induce it and sometimes it'll fall on your lap. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about this question more from an advertising perspective. So one of the things that I've experienced a lot is just in terms of approvals, in terms of legal and compliance and all of that. I think being in the financial services industry, it's definitely different than other industries like CPG or beauty or anything like that. It's very strictly regulated. So there's a lot of regulation in terms of having to submit things to legal and get them approved and having to change them and all of that. So that's kind of always something a challenge that, we look out for, that we have to add to certain timelines and things like that, and, revising certain assets and things like that. So that's kind of a challenge from the specific teams that I've worked on. I think is different in the financial services industry versus marketing for other industries.
I would say for me, I think one of the things that can sometimes it has been a bit of a surprise in companies is in our day-to-day lives, we're so used to having so many things change so quickly, technology and so many capabilities. And in a lot of big companies, they're kind of behind on the technology capabilities they have. So it sometimes can surprise you that, a lot of the things that you think, oh, this will be so easy to segment this audience and to run this campaign and do these. And sometimes you really have to bootleg what you're, able to do and find workarounds because, systems don't always, to get them into, large organizations is a lot of work, and technology changes fast. So every time they're caught up, things are different. And so it can sometimes feel a little frustrating, we seem like we're behind in capabilities that other industries might have. So, I can't necessarily compare if it's different elsewhere, but it can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge trying to work within, the systems that you have in place. But some of that also, to Andy's point, may be related to the regulations and the other things. So, but, you find creative ways to work around it and, and do with what you have.
Awesome. A lot of very different stories there. Really, really good advice. So kind of pivoting into some current events sort of viewpoints, how has your company adjusted to the current volatility? Because we're all in financial services and obviously things are kind of all over the place right now, a lot of unexpected things happening. So how have you kind of adjusted your strategy and maybe what has worked and what hasn't?
That's a really good question. So here's the thing. Truth be told, the work product has been seamless. The interactions, the meetings, and the output, productivity has been an all-time high. And we don't have the resources that we did. We aren't as fully staffed as we were. We weren't allowed to have consultants, et cetera, or on site. So we're leaner, but the work product has been high and it's been super efficient. And now there's no putting this back in the box again. Like, like the work environment has changed forever in that a segment of our work week will be remote going forward. So it's been great. Now, that being said, not having those opportunities to have lunch with your colleagues or, just take a walk. We work it's at the Prudential, so it's downtown, as Rachel knows, and there's a lot of energy downtown. And even during the holidays, you could run with a colleague to do a little Christmas shopping or to go get a manicure together or et cetera. There's none of that happening. And that feels just like it does in your personal life. It's really hard because you build those relationships with people. And yes, you can pick up the phone and FaceTime or Skype, but it's not the same as a face-to-face interaction. So that's been, for me, the most challenging part. I cannot have any lunches with my publishers. I'm just not connecting with people live, but the work hasn't suffered in terms of productivity.
I agree with that. I think people are working probably even longer because they're not commuting anymore, and the blend between your home and your work is gone because your computer is right next to your bed or whatever. So I think people are definitely working longer. I've noticed my company really shift, and this is kind of towards Blake's point. We're a 150-plus-year-old company, and we have these really archived sort of processes and systems, and all these things aren't really connected to each other and speaking, to each other so that we can do really good marketing. So I've noticed a huge shift and to my company to really push forward with a lot more digital solutions to allow people to submit life insurance business electronically without having to wait 40 days or whatever it is. So, so that's been a huge digital push, I would say, which is, sort of behind the times in many ways, because we should have been there 10 years ago, but it's a giant and it sometimes can move slowly. And then I would also say I agree with Ro in that I've been in my company now, I think 15 years, so it's been a while. So I've had relationships that are solid with people that I've known a long time. I know their kids, I've been to their weddings and stuff like that. So for me, it's a bit of a different onboarding experience when we went remote because I had those established relationships. But what I will say is I had in March, right when COVID hit and everything, I had a really weird, unique situation where my boss gave his notice because he was commuting 3 hours a day, and my counterpart went to a different team. So I was a team of one and had to onboard my counterpart and then help, sort of with the hiring of the future boss. So I think, in a remote environment, it is hard to build those relationships. And I can sympathize with you, Blake, if you're onboarding remotely. I've never met my colleagues on my team. We FaceTime every day, but I don't know how tall they are. It's you see only sort of a screen. So it's really a unique environment. And I would say, even also for people that were good friends of mine in the marketing division, because I don't work on specific projects with them, I don't talk to them as much anymore. And so they were my good friends, but because I'm not interfacing with them every day like I am, with the colleagues I'm on projects with, you sort of have to make a conscious effort to shoot them an email and say, hey, how are you doing? Thinking of you, how's this, that, and the other thing, just to keep those relationships fresh and sort of, thriving. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I would have to agree with, everything everyone said so far. I think no one really expected, how productive everyone's been, before all of this. It was really hard to work from home or to request to work from home on, a certain day or something like that. And now I think a lot of people realize how productive, the teams are, which I think is great. But at the same time, I think everyone misses human interaction and being in the office and even commuting. I think it gets a little bit monotonous, for me being in my apartment and just kind of going over to my computer every day. But I think overall everyone's been productive and kind of just, going along with it.
Yeah, I think on those same notes, so I mean, because I wasn't at my company when this first hit, I don't have the immediate change like that those first couple of months, but on that same theme of just trying to figure out remotely how to adapt and work with people, my family I've been staying with during most of quarantine kind of laughs at me because I actually will bop around the house and like sit in different places. And I said it was because early on when I would have these conversations trying to get to know coworkers, I was like, I have nothing to differentiate anybody that I'm talking to, particularly if you just do conference call versus a Zoom FaceTime. I was like, so I need something mentally to feel like I'm, in a different space. So I'll sit at the kitchen table for one conversation, my room for a different one. So that's been kind of just a funny thing. And, and colleagues then do find it funny that I've always got a different background where so many people are sitting in the same space. But on a broader level, in terms of the company, like I say, I wasn't there at Morgan Stanley when this hit early in or late winter, I guess. But what I've learned since, and I've seen that I actually really like, and again, I think speaks to the culture of where I'm at now, was they really focused on a lot of communication out to their participants and clients and trying to be there to reassure them. It was an incredibly volatile time, obviously, for a number of reasons it still is. But I think that was one of the first things that was top of mind for the organization, from what I can tell, was that it was about making sure people knew that, there are experts here, we are stable, we are helping to figure things out, our team is in transition just as you are, but talk to us, particularly for the wealth management space, this is when an advisor, and similarly back when I was at JP Morgan, and I used to hear a lot about during the crises, in 2008, it was that same kind of make sure people know that you're there for them. And that's one of the, most important key messages you can get out during any time of crisis.
Yeah, awesome. Blake, actually, in one of my classes, we talked about how kids studying at home, doing like online school, it's helpful for them to like move around, study different spots. So that's like a proven thing that you can.
I learned that in a college class actually once, so that's
really
funny. Yes, yeah, I had a professor who told us that. He would kind of test us, mix us up, and say, "You'll remember things differently." So that's precisely why I did it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I should definitely start doing that. I get a little bit bored in my room. All right, awesome. So we kind of talked about this in this question, kind of how you handled the process of going virtual. The challenges were the social interactions, missing that. Would you say there were any opportunities that you found with the kind of virtual shift?
That's a great question, Rachel. Absolutely. There was an opportunity to sit back and rethink as a team what we were doing and if it made sense. Like, I give you a really good example. In marketing, there's a lot of collateral, and now that we're virtual, it's a digital ecosystem, and we don't need anything printed. And it's shifting the paradigm a bit to really think through some of our literature. And so the pieces that our sales team depends on, like, does that make sense? And so we're doing it's been a little bit of a house cleaning exercise in the last several months, and we've become more efficient as a team. So that's been pretty awesome. The other thing is that we're just super tech savvy now as well. Like, we have a number of things that everyone's using, whether it's on social, whether it's for connection. So I think that's really great. I think that people have upped their tech game. And you have to be creative. Like, when you have something like this happen, it forces you to really think in ways that you've never had to think before. Whether it's like, okay, if I'm going to do something outside, how am I going to make it work? How am I going to, enjoy a holiday? Or how am I going to have this meeting and make it interesting and compelling? So I think that it's really allowed for a lot of creative thinking, a lot of innovation.
Yeah, I like those points. I also think a lot of my job requires like deep thinking when I'm really planning strategies or looking into research to inform a marketing campaign. And I found when I was in the office, I would get sort of like distracted because I was in this long table environment, and everybody just kind of sat around the table, and I would sort of listen to everybody's conversations, or someone would say, "Hey, Karen, can you tell me more about that?" Just distracted all the time. So I find remote work really good for like that deep thinking, because I can just kind of shut out and nobody sort of interrupts my thought process. And then when I'm ready to come up for air, it's like, okay, we have a meeting, we debrief, we think about it, we talk about it. So I would say that that has been really helpful in the remote world. And yeah, and I think also there's always opportunity with every challenge, right? So positivity is something that can make you stand apart. You know, people are pretty down right now, and I think just getting in control of your own attitude is like really contagious. If you're positive and you show sort of light and optimism, I think that's a good thing to think about. And yeah, just being really quick to think about plan B because we've had to. So I definitely echo Rose's comments. Like, we're doing a collateral update inventory right now, house cleaning, and saying, we don't need this. We don't really need this. No one's using this. No one cares. So and to help us really like hone in and prioritize like the things that matter, which is what we could be thinking in any normal environment, but this is sort of under a magnifying glass because of the environment today. So
Yeah, I would say similar sentiments. I think being able to shift quickly is sort of, something that came out of this. Obviously, having to shift, our specifically for like our media plan. We had a lot of things that were in person, or things like that we had to cancel or pause, or so just kind of being nimble and being able to shift. I think, and sort of doing it as a team. Is definitely sort of a positive or an opportunity that came out of it. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think my fellow panelists have covered a lot of the things I think that most of us are experiencing similarly. One thing I would say in addition, so the business group that I'm in at Morgan Stanley is actually relatively new. The business is only a little bit over a year old. And so one thing that I think worked in its favor is that because it's so new, it doesn't necessarily have a lot of solid entrenched processes and such. And so it was pretty agile and able to kind of alter and shift some of its plans and tactics. In particular being, this group did a lot of in-person events and then they had to all move online. So kind of driving some innovative ideas of how do you make, when everything's going online and everything is virtual, how do you make your event stand out? How do you kind of reach into, your audience and make sure that you're really connecting with them? And so, yeah, I think I agree. All the sort of taking the time, seeing what you have, making sure it's the right pieces that are working best, and being really agile have been some of the most important abilities.
Awesome. Yeah, that agility is definitely very important, and also kind of getting those tech skills, absolutely essential. Kind of everyone is being forced to do that right now. So definitely good things to pick up. Great. So a lot of our members are looking for full-time positions. They're getting closer to graduation. And then also everyone at Northeastern is constantly looking for co-ops, for internships. So does your company offer any internships or co-ops, or have any full-time positions coming up? And what kind of advice would you give to someone looking to get hired at your company or in the industry more generally?
So that's great. I mean, as you know, Rachel, with Natixis, you're our co-op and a star co-op at that. The pandemic, the first half of the pandemic was really strange in that with, a lot of the issues around health and safety, we put the co-op ship on pause, but it has started again. And so we're always looking for really good co-ops, and we encourage applicants to apply to Natixis. We also have summer interns. That's another program that we offer. And then I'm happy to, anybody interested at Natixis can link in with me. I'm definitely happy to submit your resume. On our site, you'll see open positions, and things do open up fairly regularly. And then I think now, with things changing, whether it's with the election and the environment and upcoming vaccine, there'll be changes and more growth. And so it's ever evolving. And so, definitely apply. It's a great company, great benefits, and I'm happy to help anyone.
So at John Hancock, I know we have Northeastern co-ops often. I don't know what the window is for applying, but I'm hoping Rachel, maybe your organization has more information on that, but we do accept Northeastern co-ops. And what I would say as far as advice during co-ops, we've had many, and what I would say that makes a co-op stand apart is if you think about someone in their role, like myself, we're pretty busy just trying to get some things done. And so to train somebody else on it is taking time to do that, right? So if somebody does that for you, soak it in, ask good questions, do a really good job. And then my advice would be to take like the 10% extra time and say, okay, this is what they asked me to do, but then I'm going to like kick it up a notch and just say, here's one thing I think could also add value to the project you're working on, and sort of, you know, not only be sort of, you know, taking the project, but then elevating it to the next level as best as you can. And I think at the very least, it just shows that you care, you're diligent, you're organized. And I definitely think that the co-ops can lead to future positions and contacts. So, you know, qualities like that will go a long way. And as far as sort of, you can certainly LinkedIn with myself as well, and same offer that Ro so graciously made about Natixis, I'm happy to do at John Hancock as well, or offer any other career advice. But just a couple of good nuggets that I've gotten in my career as I've been job searching. One, you know, I think on LinkedIn, when you reach out to people that you don't know very well, always provide some sort of thought process behind it that is, we're marketers, right? So you want to think in that other person's mindset. So it's like, hey, Karen, I know you work at John Hancock in this wellness component. I'm really interested in learning more about that space. You know, here's why I am interested, and here's what I'm looking to gain from you. And I'm hoping you have 5 seconds to talk to me more about it. But I guess that my point is just maybe a more personalized, catered note, as opposed to like, hey, I want to expand my network, and can you just LinkedIn me in case I have a job I want to apply to at your company in the future? So really try to build that like personal bridge where you've taken the extra time and steps to learn more about that person, and not cold call them without, you know, offering something of value. So the other thing I like to do when I'm making a connection on LinkedIn is I make the connection, have the conversation, but then I say, okay, what can I do for you now? Because it's a reciprocal relationship, right? Like that person is taking time out of their day to train you or talk to you or give advice. So I think even if they say nothing, and 99% of the time that's what they say, it's still nice to say like, okay, I'm willing to help you as well in any way, so that you build that sort of two-way relationship. And so that's just 2 pieces of advice that I would pass on.
Yeah, so at Morgan Stanley, as far as like analyst programs go, I think the majority of like entry level programs are within more of like the finance space, like wealth management, investment banking, technology. But like everyone else said, if anyone sees, you know, a certain role open in marketing, you know, definitely feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think from like the firm-wide marketing perspective specifically, I don't think there are currently any roles open, but there's so many different teams and lines of business with their own marketing teams. So there's definitely a lot of options. And I think as far as the co-ops go, I mean, our biggest office is in New York. I'm not sure if you guys, I don't know about now, but in general, travel for the co-ops, or if they're only in Boston, but I don't have too much information about that, but I'm sure, I don't know if Rachel has more information on that, like what companies accept co-ops. And then as far as advice, I would say, you know, don't be afraid to network with people. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult now, you know, with less events and things like that. And I would say don't be afraid to, you know, message people on LinkedIn, really kind of try to find that common thread of, like Karen was saying, you know, making it personal, I think goes a long way. And I think it just makes you a little bit more memorable, and, you know, the receiver more open to kind of giving you advice and giving you help.
Yeah, so I echo pretty much all the advice shared here, and I would defer to Andy on what she knows, as again, being relatively new, I'm not actually sure, but feel free to find me on LinkedIn if you do see roles or anything. I'm happy to give advice. Yeah, I think from my perspective, my advice, certainly being now having had a career in marketing for a number of years, and I never studied it, so kind of don't be afraid of what you don't know. Always be sure to ask good questions. No one expects you to know everything right off the bat. And I'd say when I interview people, I always prefer the candidate that asks me more questions than I ask them, because I think it shows an open mind, it shows resourcefulness, it shows curiosity, and those are the people who are really, gonna help. And to Karen's point, kind of go that extra mile in the project, think ahead to what's needed. So never be afraid of asking questions if you think you might not know something.
Awesome. Great advice. And for the companies, I think Morgan Stanley and John Hancock, I know John Hancock does offer co-ops. I think they might be closed for this cycle, but this semester is quickly coming to an end. So anyone that's starting their search next semester, definitely look into John Hancock. I know they offer a lot of positions. And then I don't think we have a partnership with Morgan Stanley for official co-op programs, but I believe you can self-develop. So, get your, if you apply to an internship at Morgan Stanley and it's for the right period of time, you can kind of coordinate with your co-op officer or advisor. So if you're interested in Morgan Stanley, even though we don't have a co-op program, if you're able to kind of get a position there, then you could figure it out. It's still an option. Awesome. Oh, actually, Ryan just said Morgan Stanley does do co-ops in New York. So, and we also can travel for co-ops. So to answer that question, Andy. Cool. All right. I think that is the end of my kind of drafted questions. So we can jump into questions from the audience. I don't know if anyone has any questions they want to just come out and say. I've had a couple people DM me questions. So if anyone has anything they urgently want to ask right now. All right, if not, okay, great. I can go into some of the questions that I got through the chat. So let's see, someone asked about the culture at different companies that you've worked at. So how does kind of maybe one of the companies that you've worked at for a long time in the past compared to what you're doing now? What was maybe better or worse or special about it?
Do you want me to take that?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. You guys, for these extra questions, you guys can, if you want to answer one of them in particular, or you can just go for it, or we could go down the line if all of you want to answer it.
Just briefly, I can just say that I did work at other companies that were cutthroat. That just doesn't work for me. Where people are really competitive and they feel like they have a secret sauce and they don't want to tell you. And it's an environment where everybody's vying for the same position or the same acknowledgement and recognition. And it's just stressful. It's stressful enough to be working. For me, that kind of culture ends up being it doesn't work for me. It's not where I do my best work. And so I prefer an environment that's really collaborative, where I feel like we have each other's back and I'm going to share with you what I know, and your win is my win and vice versa.
Yeah, I would just say I've been in different industries. So I've had the viewpoint of a couple different industries at this point. And one thing that I like about financial services versus other career paths is, it is professional, at least at John Hancock, it's very professional. And sort of, when I was at Barney, sort of launching the spa, that was a very localized opportunity where, it wasn't really a career path. And so what I like about where I am now is, I can spin off into a bunch of different directions depending on whatever is happening. So it feels very professional. It feels very robust. It does feel sort of more global and bigger. And so that's definitely a good thing, I would say. And although it's big, it still feels warm. And the people seem to care. I mean, I've been there 15 years and I definitely wouldn't have stayed if I wasn't happy, or if the sort of like team collaboration and environment and kindness wasn't there. So that's also something that has made me stay so long, because it's something I enjoy so much about the company I work for.
Yeah, so I actually came from a media agency. I was working on a financial services client, but being at a media agency, the culture is just very, very different from where I am now. It's a lot more relaxed in terms of the culture. I would say people are more like it's younger. I feel like a lot of the people are younger, like a lot of people right out of college. So it just kind of adds to that more relaxed culture. Whereas now, obviously I'm in a much more structured corporate professional environment, which I prefer, but I think it's obviously up to, whatever your preference is. But it was definitely for me like a very stark contrast between like an agency and, being at a financial services company.
So for me, I would say, having been at a number of like really large company with, 5 and 6 digit numbers of employees, it's actually not even just, I'd say, company to company where there's differences that you'll find it within groups and business lines, as well in really large organizations. That, again, whether it's because they are traditionally more structured and hierarchical, or, just kind of how they manage, and it can change a lot as business, it's a fast moving and changing business, I would say. So leadership teams may change, and that will suddenly make a big difference to how, what it feels like day to day. So the one thing I would say that I've learned though, that's really helpful, if you want to kind of get to know the company, from my experience, one of the key things that I like best in, when I've been happiest with cultures is when a group really cares about its communication to the team. So it's a kind of helpful thing to ask if you're interviewing or looking for things, say, how does the leadership team communicate, and if they're a team that really cares about the employees and making sure the culture is happy and transparent, they're doing town halls, once a quarter at least. They might be doing weekly emails with updates that share everything. And I've literally been on teams where it's not just about the business, it's whose birthday is it this week? Who got married last weekend? Who just had a new baby? And it really gets personal because they want you to feel like you have that team family environment. So I think a great way to find out if you're in, a really positive culture is, what does the leadership team want in terms of communicating and being transparent with the group?
Awesome. So another one of our questions was targeted towards Blake. So you are virtually onboarding, and the way that Northeastern works, sorry if I didn't explain this before, but we do co-ops. So like every other semester, we do a 6-month internship. So, starting next semester, half of our students will be doing a full-time internship as opposed to classes. So we can kind of relate to the online or the virtual onboarding process. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What are maybe some of the challenges, some of the things that have been good about it? Because I'm sure it's very different from anything you've ever experienced in onboarding before.
Yes, very. And I would say, again, I'll go back to, as silly as this sounds, one of the things I sort of realized was that when it came time to do the one-on-one meet and greets with team members and people I'd be working with, I set most of them up as conference calls, not as Zooms, for a variety of reasons. And I now have told people, ask, make sure they're comfortable with it, whoever you're working with, but do it FaceTime, because like I say, I sort of realized quickly that I was like, I now can't differentiate. I don't remember what conversations I had, how to tell the difference, since I don't have a person that I was looking at. Differentiating voices is a little hard. And for the most part, for the first 2-3 weeks, I was sitting in the same spot every day. So I would say, even if I know, and friends in other companies and industries and such, I know a lot of people are a little bit worn out of some of the Zooms. It's gets a little tiring. I fully understand that. But I think when you're new, if you could ask either your manager to ask them, or if you just, when setting up meetings, it think it'll go a long way, because that has started helping me for newer people that I've met. And then I would say too, just make sure you're kind of, hopefully, whoever your manager is that you're, working with, make sure to be honest if you're struggling in any way. I was able to kind of share with my manager early on then that again, one of those things I was missing was that walking between meetings to be able to just, hey, you know, I jotted down this acronym in the last meeting. I don't know what that means. Can you tell me? Or, you know, I don't really get this part of the business yet. Can you walk me through? And she was able then to help kind of make sure she and I then talked, you know, even more frequently and with less formality, so I could kind of collect and ask questions. Or occasionally she'd just bring me into meetings that were not at all going to be something I worked on, but I could just shadow and listen in, because I was like, I'm just missing that kind of learning through osmosis opportunity. So, you know, share with your manager if you're feeling like you're just not picking stuff up, and they'll usually be able to, I think, kind of help bring you in a little bit more.
Awesome. That's really good advice, especially for a lot of us about to go on co-op. I can see from our audience, I know a bunch of people here, and I would say like maybe half, at least more people are going on co-op next semester. So really good to know, gonna be valuable experience. Obviously things are gonna be very different, but we're going to have to adapt. So we'll see how it goes. And last question that we have from the audience, just a really quick kind of, I feel like it's a fun one. Do you guys ever get to travel for your job? Obviously in normal circumstances. And if you have been able to travel, where have you gone? That was fun.
I'll take that one, Rachel. I've been really lucky with Asia. As Rachel knows, I got to go to Hong Kong twice, and they sent me to London and Paris to work for a few weeks. And then they sent me to Berlin and Rome and Barcelona a couple of times. So it's worth it. If you get a global job, when things, you know, when obviously this environment, and it will end, it's great to be able to travel and to meet with stakeholders and clients in the different regions.
So that's a hard act to follow. I have traveled to the continental US for conferences and whatnot, but our client base is in the US, so it's not global.
Let's see. Karen, you froze. I don't know if maybe you could turn, or let's see. Okay, it looks like she's pretty frozen. I'm seeing a black screen from her for her.
I think someone had to jump off too.
Yeah, that was one of our members, Maria. Let's see. Oh, but she might have gotten disconnected because now I'm not seeing her. But did anyone else have an answer? Oh wait, Karen, you're back. You cut out a little bit. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. My internet just booted me off. But yeah, so I went to Tokyo. Long story short, it was a very different climate than what I saw in the US, and it was in like a fishing town in outside of Japan and outside of Tokyo. So it's just interesting experience. So if you get the chance to travel, I think it's a good idea.
Awesome.
I have not traveled for work, maybe in the future, but not yet.
In my current roles, and even at JP Morgan now, but back when I was at SIFMA, and essentially did a lot of events work there. So nothing quite so exotic or fun or international, but got to do, you know, conferences like to be held in warm, sunny places. So California, Florida, Texas. So I'll still take that. I had some nice trips around for that.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that.
They're always like on a Thursday, Friday, so you just extend and, you know, make sure to get that weekend in there.
Exactly. California sounds so nice right now.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I wish, no, I mean, I'm in Connecticut right now and it's like ridiculously warm though. It's like 70 degrees for some reason. So it feels like Southern California for like a couple days, but not forever. All right, so it is 8:03. So I think we're gonna wrap it up for questions. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us. This was awesome. We are very glad that you were able to join us tonight. If anyone in our audience wants to say hi and do some networking, we can stay on for a couple minutes. But otherwise, we are pretty much all set.